This video is not about fear. It is about the gap between knowing something and doing something. Most people who care about phone privacy have read articles, watched videos, maybe felt briefly concerned, and then put their phone down and changed nothing. That gap between awareness and action is where the actual problem lives, because your phone's default settings were not designed with your privacy as the priority. They were designed with data collection as the priority. The convenience features that make your phone easier to use are, in many cases, also the mechanisms through which your behavior, your location, your interests, and your daily patterns are collected, packaged, and sold. What makes this video different from general privacy advice is that every setting we are going to cover is tied to documented government action, not vague online rumor, not speculative concern from anonymous sources. Federal Trade Commission enforcement cases against data brokers who bought and sold your location data without consent. FBI public service announcements telling you to power down your phone. NSA best practice guidance recommending specific settings changes. These are the recommendations of the agencies whose job is to understand the actual threat landscape. 5 settings. Documented government backing for why each one matters. Specific steps to change them on your device. Let us start. Setting 1. The advertising ID, your phone's license plate. Your phone has a unique identifier built into its operating system specifically for advertising purposes. On iPhone, it is called the IDFA, the identifier for advertisers. On Android, it is called the GAID, the Google Advertising ID. This identifier functions like a license plate for your digital behavior. Every app that runs on your phone can read this identifier. Every ad network that serves ads in those apps can use it to track which apps you use, how you use them, and what you do across all of them. And when you open a news app, a weather app, a game, and a shopping app, the advertising network sees all of those sessions linked by the same identifier and builds a unified profile of your behavior. The FTC has taken enforcement action against data brokers who purchase these advertising ID-linked behavioral profiles and sell them. Enforcement cases have documented data brokers selling location data to third parties, including government agencies, insurance companies, and financial institutions, in ways that consumers never anticipated when they installed a flashlight app or a recipe finder. The profile built from advertising ID tracking can include where you sleep, where you work, which medical facilities you visit, which religious sites you attend, which political events you go to, and who you spend time with. All inferred from the pattern of your location data and app usage, all linked by the advertising ID that is running on your device right now. Here's how to disable it. On iPhone, open Settings, tap Privacy and Security, tap Tracking. Turn off Allow Apps to Request to Track. This prevents apps from accessing your IDFA. Additionally, go back to Privacy and Security, scroll down to Apple Advertising, tap it, and turn off personalized ads. On Android, open Settings, tap Privacy, tap Ads, tap Delete Advertising ID, and confirm. On Android, the distinction between resetting the ID and deleting it entirely matters. Resetting gives you a new license plate. Deleting the advertising ID removes the license plate mechanism entirely. Delete it, do not just reset it. Setting 2, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth scanning, tracking you when they are off. This setting surprises people because it contradicts reasonable assumptions about how their phone works. You turn off Wi-Fi on your phone. You assume your phone is no longer connecting to or scanning for Wi-Fi networks. On most Android phones and some configurations of other devices, this assumption is wrong. There are settings called Wi-Fi scanning and Bluetooth scanning that allow apps and Google services to scan for nearby Wi-Fi networks and Bluetooth devices, even when Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are turned off in your phone's quick settings. These scans are used to improve location accuracy, map foot traffic in retail environments, and support various location-based services. The practical consequence is that your phone is broadcasting its presence to nearby Wi-Fi access points and Bluetooth devices, even when you believe those radios are off. Retailers, venue operators, and location data companies use this to track which stores you enter, how long you stay, and how often you return. This data feeds the same data broker ecosystem that the FTC has taken enforcement action against. On Android, this setting is often buried several menus deep in a location that does not seem obviously related to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Open Settings. Tap Location. Tap Location Services or Advanced depending on your Android version. You will find Wi-Fi scanning and Bluetooth scanning as separate toggles. Turn both off. On iPhone, the equivalent concern relates to ensuring that location services for system services related to networking and location are appropriately limited. Go to Settings, Privacy and Security, Location Services, System Services, and review the toggles there, disabling networking and wireless, if present, and any location-based services that you do not have a specific reason to enable. The NSA's mobile device best practices, published as a public document, explicitly recommend turning off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth when not in active use, and understanding that the devices may continue scanning even when these appear to be off, is part of why that recommendation exists. Setting 3, location permissions. Audit. The permissions you forgot about you have granted location permissions to apps over months or years of phone use. Many of those grants happened in the moment of installing an app, under pressure from a permission prompt that appeared before you had used the app enough to evaluate whether it needed location access. The result is typically a location permissions list with apps that have access you would not consciously choose to grant today. The FBI's public guidance on mobile security explicitly recommends auditing app permissions regularly and revoking permissions that are not necessary for the app's function. This is not generic privacy advice. It reflects the documented reality that apps request location access for purposes that include revenue generation through data sales, not just functional improvement. There are 2 dimensions to audit. As covered in earlier videos, but in the context of this 5-setting checklist, they deserve explicit inclusion. On iPhone, settings, privacy and security, location services. For every app showing always, ask whether that app genuinely requires continuous background location access to function. And change always to while using. Unless you have a specific reason the app needs to track your location when you're not using it, change. While using to never for any app where you cannot identify a location-dependent function. Turn off precise location for any app where approximate location is sufficient. On Android, settings, location, app permissions. Apply the same review. Change every always to only while using unless you have a specific justification. Change others to deny where location access is not functionally necessary. This audit should be treated as periodic maintenance rather than a one-time fix. New apps accumulate new permissions. Reviewing every 3 to 6 months keeps the permission list aligned with your current understanding of what each app actually needs. Setting 4, diagnostic and usage. Data sharing. The data. You didn't know you were sending your phone, by default on most operating systems, sends diagnostic and usage data to the manufacturer and operating system developer. On iPhone, this is Apple. On Android devices, this is typically Google, and potentially the device manufacturer separately. This data includes usage patterns, which apps you open and when, crash reports, performance metrics, and in some configurations, information about the content of your interactions with the device. The stated purpose is product improvement. The actual scope of what is collected and how it is used is defined by terms of service that most users have not read. The FTC has, in enforcement actions related to tech company data practices, taken positions that data collection described as being for improvement purposes can be broader in scope and more commercially valuable than the characterization suggests to consumers. On iPhone, settings, privacy, and security, analytics and improvements. Turn off Share iPhone analytics. Turn off Share iCloud analytics. Turn off Improve Sarai and dictation. Turn off Improve Health and Activity if present. Each of these toggles controls a separate stream of data transmission from your device to Apple's servers. On Android, settings, Google, more, Google usage, and diagnostics. Turn this off. Additionally, go to Settings, Privacy, Advanced, and look for Usage and Diagnostics or similar options, depending on your device manufacturer. Samsung devices have separate diagnostic sharing controls in their own settings. Review and disable these as well. The specific recommendation to disable diagnostic sharing appears in NSA guidance on mobile device security and in FTC documentation discussing the commercial uses of ostensibly non-commercial data collection. Setting 5, the weekly power down, NSA's zero-click defense. The NSA's best practice guidance for mobile device security, published as a public document available from the NSA's website, includes a recommendation that most people find surprising because it is so simple. Turn your phone completely off and back on at least once a week. The reason for this recommendation relates to a category of cyber attack called zero-click exploits. These are malware delivery mechanisms that do not require you to tap a link, open an attachment, or take any action. They exploit vulnerabilities in the code that processes incoming data, such as the code that handles iMessage previews, WhatsApp message parsing, or other automatic processing of received content. By sending a specially crafted message, an attacker can execute code on your device without you doing anything. Zero-click exploits of this type have been documented in commercial spyware products, including NSO Group's Pegasus and others, and they have been found on the devices of journalists, activists, and government officials. The exploits are sophisticated, expensive to develop, and primarily deployed against high-value targets. They are not the most common threat ordinary users face. However, many of these exploits live in the device's RAM, its temporary working memory, rather than in persistent storage. RAM is cleared when the phone powers off completely. A full power cycle removes malware that has not established persistent storage level access. The NSA's recommendation of a weekly power cycle is not because the agency expects ordinary citizens to be targeted by Pegasus-level commercial spyware. It is because the habit of periodic full power cycling is a low-cost, zero-effort intervention that provides protection against the class of RAM-resident threats without requiring any technical knowledge. To implement this, once a week, fully power your phone off, not just lock it, not just restart it through software. Power off, wait approximately 30 seconds, power back on. This clears RAM-resident processes and reestablishes your device in a clean state. Many people charge their phones overnight without ever fully powering them off for months or years. The NSA guidance suggests this habit leaves devices in a state where any RAM-resident compromise from the past week persists indefinitely. Putting it together, dive to the actual checklist. 5 settings. Here's the summary for your reference. Delete your advertising ID entirely on Android. Disable tracking and personalized ads on iPhone. Remove the license plate that links your behavior across apps and data broker networks. Turn off Wi-Fi scanning and Bluetooth scanning in your location settings. Stop your phone from broadcasting its presence to tracking infrastructure when those radios are supposed to be off. Audit your location permissions. Revoke always access from any app that does not genuinely need it. Disable precise location where approximate is sufficient. Turn off diagnostic and usage data sharing to Apple, Google, and your device manufacturer. Stop the product improvement data collection that is more commercially valuable than the framing suggests. Power your phone completely off once a week. Clear RAM-resident threats before they can establish persistence. The phones you carry know more about you than most people who know you personally. They know where you go, how often, at what times, with whom. They know what you read, what you search for, what you buy, what you nearly bought. They know which hospitals you visit, and which churches or mosques or synagogues you attend. That information, assembled through defaults you never deliberately chose, is being packaged and sold through ecosystems that the FTC is still in the process of regulating and that operate largely without your meaningful awareness. 5 settings. Backed by documented government guidance. The gap between knowing this and doing something about it is the only gap that matters. Close it tonight.